Our theory of change is that if we want to have a shared and durable prosperity, then all business has to be competing not only to be best in the world, but best for the world. And if we wanted all business to do that, then whether they're called B corporations or not doesn't really matter. It's more about making sure that we've created both the norms and the institutions that allow all business to do business in a different way. So there's lots of then pieces to making that happen over a long period of time that start with certification, because certification basically having a name, you name something. If you build it, they will come. If you name something, you create an identity, a center of gravity, and in this case, with a corporate certification, you create an identifiable group of companies that are behaving in a different way, and you can start to look at how those companies' behavior is affecting their performance and is attracting stakeholders. And so, you start to see how those kinds of businesses are able to attract capital and attract talent in a way that others aren't. So you start to create data and stories that can help you bridge the gap from a small community of companies that are kind of leading the charge, that have planted the flag way out here, and then created a model for all the rest to follow. When we started, we created a certification, and we knew that that certification, to have meaning, had to have a rigorous methodology underlying it that addressed what was missing in existing corporate behavior. So in the end, this was all about behavior. And the two things that we came up with, one was about trying to institutionalize the consideration of the interests of stakeholders, not just shareholders, when a company was making decisions. And so, because we wanted to change the conversation in the boardroom there, so one metric was about expanding fiduciary duty, so that the conversation in the boardroom, instead of a general counsel saying, oh, we can't talk about these issues other than value maximization, the general counsel would have to sit in the boardroom and say, we have to. And that was meant to drive a change in behavior inside the boardroom. The second piece of certification is about social and environmental performance. So as opposed to sort of the built to last piece, which is the consideration of stakeholders over the long term, the other one is, what are you actually doing to create social impact or to create value for your stakeholders? So we created a rating system that had a bunch of kind of key components to it. One was that you were looking in a comprehensive way at all of the stakeholders of the business, so the community, the consumers, the workers, the environment, the company's governance practices, how it dealt with its whole supply chain. The second thing was wanting to be able to roll all of that up and make a judgment about what kind of impact the company was having in total through the aggregate of all of its different practices. And then the third thing was recognizing that lots of companies were going to be good at a few things that they might have particularly cared about or that they came into the business with, but might be able to discover lots of other things through going through that process. And so the standards are really about a process. A company gets exposed to them by going through the B impact assessment. It takes a company, depending on its size, maybe an hour to a couple hours to go through. And in the process of doing that, they're exposed to lots of questions about things that they probably don't know anything about. We are very clear that that business by itself is not going to solve all of our social and environmental problems. It's more a thesis that the nonprofit sector and government sector are necessary but insufficient. Business, however you feel about capitalism or business, it dominates our lives. It's 75 or 80% of GDP. It affects all of our consumption decisions, how we invest our money, where we go, for most of us, where we go to work every day. And so if we can't use that as a tool to solve problems, then it's going to create them. This is not a question of the nonprofit sector being unnecessary or the markets will solve everything. It's more that we've chosen to put our energy into one one part of the solution to the problems that we face. There are lots of things where there is no business model. There are lots of problems that need to be solved where there's no business model, there's no revenue stream, and you need innovation that will only come from the nonprofit sector or from government funding or from regulation. So this isn't a question of not needing the nonprofit sector at all. Historians of the corporation and of business will point to an earlier era, like a 19th century era, when businesses were chartered by the state, and they were meant to have they were meant to have in return for limited liability, they were meant to have some kind of a public purpose to them. And so in that sense, this is a return to a more traditional or conservative way of doing business that has been in the second half of the 20th century, sort of the dogma of Milton Friedman, took away the idea that a business was about anything other than money.